Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am assuming you can now hear me and see me. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Peter Stone. I am the president of the Blue Shield, and I thank you all for signing up to this webinar, and especially I thank the speakers joining us and being willing to speak so quickly after all the recent events that have happened. This is a quick early reaction meeting, and there will be a longer follow-up webinar on Monday, the 20th of January between 12:30 and 16:30. And please, if you haven't got the link to that, we will be sending that to you. Today, we've asked all of the speakers to answer two questions. What was the situation in their area before the recent events? And what is the situation now? In January, we will concentrate more on what are the specific needs across Syria and what are the obstacles in addressing those needs. We have 7 speakers, all who have 10 minutes each. I will introduce and be strict with the speakers. At 8 minutes, I will tell them they have 2 minutes left. And at 10 minutes, I will ask them to conclude. That's purely so we can get through everybody in time and give a little bit of time for questions at the end. Okay, please, can you put any questions in the chat, and we will be able to keep all of those questions. And if we don't get to answer all of them in this webinar, we will try and answer them later in some way. So on that basis, I'm going to introduce the first speaker, and with the invitation, you've got a short biography of most of the speakers. We will make sure that they're there. And so the first person, I'm not going to give you a biography for everybody. We'd waste time. First speaker, Isber Sabrin. Isber, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Peter, for this introduction. We are really grateful that to Blue Shields that we were able to organize this very fast webinar to reflect and to think about the situation and actual situation in Syria. There is a need, and this webinar was organized in order to reflect on the situation of cultural heritage in Syria. We have a very difficult situation now after 13 years of a civil war and the fall of Assad regime. Everything was very happy that we have no more dictatorship. But again, the country is still facing many challenges, and our heritage in Syria is still in a very big risk. And this webinar wish and hope that we can highlight all the risk and that the Syrian cultural heritage is facing now. During this over 13 years of conflict, Syrian cultural heritage suffered from huge, immense destruction of iconic sites, and all 6 UNESCO World Heritage sites. They were affected. Our archaeological sites, they were affected by looting and illicit trafficking. So especially in non-governmental controlled areas, in the areas which are under the non-state actors. Then we have damage to museums and libraries. Museums have been looted. There are many museums there in Syria have been looted. My colleagues later, they will give more insight to this. Loss of intangible cultural heritage. The conflict has also affected in traditions, crafts, music, festivals, with many as well, millions, almost, we have 7 million displaced Syrians. So the suffer of Syrians was huge during these 13 years, and heritage as well was one of those big victims too of the Syrian conflict. Now, the heritage in Syria facing many challenges. I just appointed the main three challenges: fragmented control. Syria still now divided between several political controls. We have as well now a huge problem, which is no resources. And also, when I am talking about resources, I am meaning as well the human resources. Many Syrians, hundreds of Syrian professionals on heritage and archaeology, they left the country, and we still now lacking many capacities in order to manage the actual situation. And this is also another big challenge, the legal vacuum, which also now, because there are in many places in Syria no authorities, there is the HTS, the Hayat Tahrir Sham, which took the control. This heritage is not from their priorities, and we are now, in the last just a few days, we were facing many buildings, especially in the old cities like Damascus, Aleppo. So that now a lot of people in the old cities, they are taking advantage of the vacuum, and they are violating the heritage law. So during these 13 years of war, Syrians, we were very disappointed with the international organization. I just want to hear a point that many archaeological missions, they left Syria, and we are very grateful to many of the archaeologists and heritage professionals, who a lot of them, they are with us here in this webinar. They were able to support and to do things even after leaving Syria. So now we can say that the big international organization, they played a very modest role in order to protect the cultural heritage in Syria. We have two sides, the Director General of Antiquities and the non-state actors areas. So at the time, especially international organizations, they were just working with recognized authorities. At the time, I say Director General of Antiquities, but again, for political reason and for some sanctions against the Syrian regime, DGAM lacked a lot of international support. Since just 2017 till now, there were no contact between DGAM and international organization. Later, there is another speaker who will talk more on that. We also, I want to say also, the research centers and university played an important. Some of them, they were very loyal to Syrian heritage, and from their sides, they started to do initiatives. They did many initiatives for documentation, for engaging Syrian, training Syrian. So we are very grateful to those people.
Since you have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Since 2013, Heritage for Peace is working. So our working in Syria was supporting civil society, empowering youth people, building capacities, and launching also several initiatives focused in Palmyra, Idleb, Manbij, and Raqqa. Here, we did several initiatives. There is no place to talk about all of those initiatives, but I will mention we created an app in order to document cultural heritage instruction. We researched the illicit traffic, and we did several research on the illicit traffic of antiquities. So our research on illicit traffic was to establish an evidence-based account of looting in many places. We created this program, Syrian Heritage Training Project in Idleb region, was to building capacity on heritage law with the generous support of the Cultural Production Fund. We started working in Raqqa since 4 years, and we managed several projects. Now we are implementing another last project now, which is for this year, rehabilitation of a traditional house in order to be a community hub. Again, Palmyrene Voices, later Hassan will talk more about the work of Palmyrene Voices and how we supported the Palmyrene people. Again, and in Manbij, which is now it's very hot area suffering from battles between the Kurdish militia and Turkey militia affiliated group. We were able just a few months ago to establish and to create a project, which was a first project during this year. Also, with the generous support of the Cultural Protection Fund, we rehabilitated this hammam. This hammam before was a jail of Islamic State and now became like that. So there are a lot of work should be done, and all our effort was to protect, to work to empower people and civil society. But we do believe that now there is a need that international community should support the DGM, Directorate General of Antiquity and Museum. I hope in the next webinar we will talk more about the needs and how the international community could support and help the Syrian to protect their cultural heritage. So thank you very much. It was very fast overview about the situation. And I hope with my colleagues, they will give more insight about what is the actual situation, and you can learn more about what is happening in Syria now. Thank you very much.
Isber, thank you very much, and thank you for keeping to time. We will continue without a break, and I ask Michael Al-Maqdissi to speak, please. Michael. Michael, you're muted. No, not yet. You're still muted. Emma, is that a problem at our end? Michael, I'm afraid we still can't hear you. Just wait 1 minute.
Now
yes,
it's good.
Michael. Now it's good. Thank you.
It's good. It's good. Good. Thank you. In this brief presentation, as a former member of the Directorate General of Antiquity and Museum in Syria, I am trying to raise some question in suggestion way to consider taking measures of advance that is now in the idea of the question archéologique syrienne. Since independence and the establishment of the Directorate General of Antiquity and Museum, Syrian antiquity have witnessed many stages of prosperity and have been able to establish a policy of archaeological work and scientific research that has made in advance in study stages that have given it credibility over the years. But the years of the war that we have experienced since 2011 have caused Syrian antiquity in rule into the great abyss. This is where the conflict began between the archaeologists who supported the regime and those who opposed who raised outside the country, in the Arab countries, in Europe, in the America, etc., etc. We have noted here that the conflict had not reason to alleviate that served la question archéologique syrienne in any way. In this context, I would like to start by telling you a little anecdote. 2 years ago, I published an article entitled Archéologie du Proche-Orient, le naufrage de l'éthique, in which I try to present an objective picture of the situation of the archaeology in Syria after several years of war and destruction. In this short text, the vision that I give confirm a dramatic situation after the destruction of the site and the looting of the museum, and especially the departure of the scientific executive of the General Directorate of Antiquity and Museum. The reaction to this publication were very violent pass from the regime's archaeologists from those of the opposite. In this wolf noting here that it was natural for archaeologists who defend the Assad regime to object to such of proto-trial of the role played by the army and the secret police in subverting the fundamental principle of the Syrian archaeology. But surprisingly, opponent of the Assad regime attacked me directly through mass circulation of insulting email. This action reveals a very bitter reality that I can summarize in one sentence. The Syrian opposite archaeologists are divided among Ramslef due to many rivalry that prevent them from doing any joint work to save these tortured antiquities. That we are doing, therefore, risk generating deep opposite in the endless discussion, which could lead to the failure of any unity of the get back and the track and proper idea of the roadmap that will guide towards resolving the problem of the question archéologique syrienne in this decisive moment. The first thing is that we must find the unity and the courage to come together again. And here I mean archaeologists for all orientation and all spectrism to find a road map capable to achieving a minimum of unity to save that remains of the General Directorate of Antiquity and Museum. In this, therefore, desirable to conform always together, the concert problem that in this period posed to archaeology. I would like to firstly discuss the question of the organization of the next stage, and especially the administration question. This last point is very important because thanks to the good internal organization of the Directorate General of Antiquity and Museum, we can face other problems as first, taking emergency measures to protect historical sites and monuments that are directly threatened. I am referring here to, for example, to the area of the Euphrates, northern Syria, Hauran, and the Syrian steppe, Zabatia. The archive, the archive of this first point, it is important to think about finding the necessary financing. This is a critical point in the great challenge. Then, to start the archaeological request work, it is necessary to think about an action plan and therefore a policy of a vision of priorities. Then that has been said so far is now to everyone, but most important things is the following. Who will formulate this action policy? Who will carry out the work of the field? That is the current position of the new political masters in Syria towards Syrian archaeological heritage, and what are their general position on culture? Three questions, those are difficult to answer in the current situation. The period we are currently experiencing will bring surprises in the coming week. But as an archaeological committed to protect my country heritage, I must step in and propose the roadmap that could included the following elements. First, maintain the General Directorate of Antiquity and Museum in its current structure because its ensures administration continuity during the critical phase. Second, stop all excavation work and concentrated on destroyed site and monument by carrying out an inventory and intervention priority. Here, I think that the Directorate General of Antiquity and Museum has an important file in this regard. Third, take emergency measuring for museum and complete the work carried out by the General Directorate in down out inventory of missing objects.
Michael, you have 2 minutes.
The most important point of this topic is related to finding solution for the objects that were illegal taken in Syria and found in Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Israel, Europe, and America, and studying the legal procedure to their recovery. The last and the most important point of the SIG, the possibility of the return of the scientific and archaeologists who left Syria to strengthen the work of the Directorate General of Antiquity. These ideas that I have formulated might provide some points that should be taken into consideration by the current authority. But since we have no information on the concept of antiquity and heritage for the new authority, we can only offer any idea and any suggestion. We will have a long way to go, and we are only at the beginning. We hope to overcome the obstacle, but we can dream. While the golden age of the Directorate General of Antiquity return, unfortunately, I have many doubts because the situation it's as follows. Since December 8, 2084, we have noticed the following destruction. In Latakia Governorate, destruction of the Jable Antiquity, a part of Jable Antiquity, with some residents starting to cultivate the plant registered archaeological site. In the Governorate of Tartus, destruction of a part of Tartus Antiquity Department and the visitor center of the Markab Castle, and many destruction of the Arwad Castle. In Amrit, in the same governorate.
Michael, can I ask you please to conclude quickly?
Yes, the last, I finished. The last Abu Hafsa tomb was removed in the population dig inside. Damascus governorate, destruction of the content of the Damascus castle and the burning of the Institute of Archaeology, and etc., etc., in the Hama governorate, in the Aleppo governorate. This is my idea in general about the actual situation and some point about the future. Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. And we will continue straight away with Ristam Abdo. Ristam.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ristam.
Thank you so much. I'd like to share the screen. Yeah. Is it okay?
Perfect.
Yeah. I'd like to speak by Arabic. Maybe I can...
Yeah, we've got the simultaneous translation.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you for extending this invitation for me to present today. As you know, following the outbreak of the crisis in Syria, the devastating destruction in the country affected cultural heritage, including UNESCO World Heritage, such as Old Idleb City, Palmyra, and many others, in addition to sites on the tentative list, such as Palmyra and Oreirobos. Through our work as experts in archaeology, we focused on documentation in areas we are able to access in order to document the violations and assess them. I'm talking about North Syria, Northeast specifically. Particularly, we focused on the sites where international missions were operating previously. Prior to the conflict in Syria, around 140 missions were operating in Syria, mainly in North and Northeast specifically. Many of them European and some American. These violations were due to the lack of oversight, the legal vacuum, the limited awareness regarding archaeology. Most of the violations occurred by local communities. And of course, the absence of any missions or directorates to manage these sites played an important role in making the situation even worse. Of course, the situation worsened further by activities of antiquity traders, brokers, and smugglers. The encroachment started in late 2011 and continued till 2017, of course, increasing in intensity and spread. Again, I'm noting that I'm talking about Northeast Syria specifically. Between late 2011 and 2017, these sites were not under any form of protection, and many violations were documented at the time. When I say Northeast Syria, I'm talking about suburbs of Idleb, Afrin area mainly, Manbij and its suburbs, Ain al-Arab or Kobani, and the vicinity of that area, in addition to Raqqa Governorate, Al-Hasaka Governorate, and parts of Deir ez-Zor. Here you can see on the map the density of archaeological sites spread in North Syria and Northeast, specifically in red. You can see the spread in Al-Balligh area, Euphrates area. Unfortunately, we don't have precise statistics. However, we've issued a number of reports based on the access that we had to those sites, and I'll clarify how we've prepared these reports in 2020. Many of those sites, as I've mentioned, witnessed many violations, particularly those that were previously known because international missions were operating there. Many of those are from the classic era. Violations included different forms, not only smuggling and trafficking. It included also using these sites to for waste from rebels and building activities and construction. Of course, the violations intensified under the control of ISIS, as the so-called Islamic State was issuing license for people who wanted to conduct any activities looking for artifacts. This led to intensifying violations, mainly in Al-Hawala area. This is in the Euphrates bed. It's part of Ariqa Governorate. Satellite photos show how these areas are now full of holes that reflect the extent of the digging and excavations in the region. This work was done manually, but by a large number of people. It's estimated that dozens of people were working illegally in these sites. Another site that was largely impacted is Sabi Abyad in Al Baligh area, north to Raqqa Governorate. And a mission from Netherlands was operating there. And during the conflict, the site was a military base. Maybe you can notice on the screen how the site was destroyed. Part of it was fully destroyed, and it was the original structure was replaced by new construction that was used for military purposes, in addition to building a secure tank or storage for fuel. The Islamic State was using this as a center for its militants to refuel their vehicles. The other site is Tal Ajaja in Al Habud River. Dozens of missions were several missions were working in that site before the conflict. During the conflict,
Rustam, I apologize for breaking in, but you have 2 minutes.
During the conflict, the Islamic State used heavy machinery in that site. Another site that was also impacted severely is the Turkmen Bath and the Shah Hamdan Cemetery. The surrounding area of the cemetery was destroyed, and the stones taken from that site were used in building other new buildings in the region. According to one of our reports, it's estimated that 17% of that site was looted, and you can see that as I mentioned, illegal excavations constitute 17% of the violations, and you can see how we've categorized others, including bulldozing, soil removal. Briefly, I'll talk about Tariqa Museum. In 2013, the museum fell under the control of armed factions, and many artifacts were stolen at different stages, at different periods, and the museum itself sustained damage due to the shelling and fires, and the building itself was affected, and its storage facility was also affected. Many of the artifacts were looted. A small number of artifacts remained in place.
Ristam, I'm very sorry, but can I ask you to conclude?
Then I'll move to talk about the current situation in as briefly as possible. Currently, the situation is better than it was. The violations are much more under control. The situation is the violations are limited in number. I'll talk about Manbij specifically. We have been conducting or carrying documentation work. We have documented 1,200 artifacts. Of course, we're documenting looted artifacts. We're collecting information about these artifacts from the community, and we are working in collaboration with other partners. So far, the whereabouts of these artifacts is unknown. Raqqa Museum is now protected. Al Jazeera warehouses are also protected. So the situation is now better than it was before.
Ristam, thank you very much, and I'm sorry for making you go too fast.
Okay, thanks.
Please, can everybody also remember, as Hassan Ali prepares to do his presentation, Hassan, please everybody remember that if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we will go through the questions with as much time as we have for discussion at the end. So we're now going to listen to Hassan Ali. Hassan, all yours.
Okay. In beginning, I would like to thank you, the conference organizing team, for this invitation, and thank for all the attendants. I would like to speak in Arabic. Please give me share Isber or Emma.
You have screen sharing permission, and and the translators are ready if you wish to speak in Arabic. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'm share, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's good.
Palmyra is located about 240 kilometers from Damascus. Since the 4th century before BC, Palmyra has been a prosperous city and a hub in the region. It became the most important commercial hub at some point. In 1920, it was inscribed in the World Heritage List, and it was destroyed in 2015. Here you can see some images from Palmyra before the Syrian revolution in 2011, sorry. So these images were taken before 2011. I'll offer a quick historical chronology of the plunder and illegal excavation in Palmyra. In 1920, the French mandate government issued an initiative law in Syria based on French law, which organized the topic of archaeological missions, but antiquities trading was permitted. This law continued until the mid-1950s. After that, a new law was passed in 1963 under the rule of Hafiz al-Assad, a lot of antiquities were illegally smuggled by senior officials. After 2011, things became more messy, and many people took part in plundering and looting the antiquities. After that, ISIS or Daesh started bombing or destroying different parts of the antiquities in Palmyra. The Triumph Arc was bombed by a regime strike, not by Daesh. Several families confirmed that they saw plunderers just days before the destruction of the antiquities. A lot of parts were smuggled outside Syria illegally. In March 2016 until the beginning of December 2024, the forces of the Assad regime alongside the Russian and Iranian militias regained control of Palmyra and prevented local people from returning to their areas of origin. Al-Quds Al-Arabi reported that Iranian-backed militias started searching for antiquities in Palmyra. However, they were not able to continue with that because of the fall of the Assad regime. Here you can see some images of secret plundering and secret excavation and how Daesh destroyed the Bel temple. Here you can see that because it was booby-trapped, the stones became very small. But in the image below, the stones the rocks are very large, which proves that it was destroyed by an airstrike, not by booby trapping or IEDs. Palmyra, after the victory of the revolution, on December 8, 2024, Syria regained its freedom from the Assad regime, which impacted the future of archaeological sites, including Palmyra. There are both positive and negative aspects. The negative aspect is that there's more opportunity for plundering and sabotage. The positive aspect is that the power shift may facilitate the protection and reconstruction of Palmyra and the restoration of Palmyra as a tourist attraction in Syria. According to some contacts who returned to Palmyra, who went to Palmyra from different areas, including colleagues from Idleb, they published several images on social media. They reported that a lot of young people in Palmyra are protecting the museum in Palmyra while the new government takes care of the museum. However, taking care of Palmyra and other sites in Badia requires a larger number of specialized staff, not just a group of volunteers. There are so many archaeological sites in Syrian Badia or Syrian steppe, like Al-Hir Al-Sharqi, Al-Hir Al-Gharbi, and others. So it's not only Palmyra. There's a set of challenges and obstacles facing the new administration. These include the extensive damage to the archaeological sites, most residential buildings were destroyed by shelling, and some of these buildings can collapse. In addition, there have been negligence, displacement, and intentional destruction or arson, acts of arson by Iranian-backed militias. This affected the natural heritage, not only the cultural heritage.
Hassan, my apologies, you have 2 minutes left.
Local people were displaced and they live in dire conditions, especially in a Rukban camp. Here you can see some images, some current images. I thank my colleagues in Idlib Center for sharing these images. I would like to point out that my colleague Esper and myself Mr. Esper and myself, we co-founded the Palmyra Voices Initiative, which aims to connect the local community in Palmyra with international organizations and to support local residents to go back to Palmyra and to maintain the identity of Palmyra. The initiative worked on different projects in collaboration with local residents. I would like to thank Heritage for Peace and Esper Sabrin Foundation for their support. And I would like to thank Blue Shield for co-organizing this meeting. I urge all of them to work on developing recommendations that we can share with the new administration in Syria to protect our cultural heritage. Thank you.
Hassan, thank you very much indeed, and for keeping to time. And we are going to be joined next by Mahmoud Barakat. So Mahmoud, if you could put up your slides if you have some. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope the presentation already shared.
It's just arrived.
That's great. So I'm Mahmoud Barakat. I'm from Idlib, from the northwest of Syria. I'm an architect and heritage professional. I will talk briefly about the heritage in Idlib after 2011 and currently, like an overview or a glance about the situation now. So since Idlib is rich in archaeological sites, almost like it hosts 1/3 of the archaeological sites of the heritage in Syria. It has very rich different layers of stratigraphy that's starting from different civilizations until the Assyrians, Greek, Roman, Byzantium, and Arabs. This, let's say, just I'm trying to give an overview for someone who doesn't know about that region. So during the revolution after 2011, the Idlib was the earliest areas were affected by the Syrian army, let's say, since people went into demonstrations very early, and then later in 1 year almost, many of the Syrian army withdrew from the countryside. And the countryside of Idlib, it's it hosts this World Heritage sites called the Ancient Villages of Northern Syria. And this around 40 villages and some archaeological parks. And this area generally were exposed to many different ways of damages, vandalism, smuggling, and other kind of violations. The later on, that was also sort of a target by the Syrian regime, and the Russian forces, air forces, were targeting the areas in a, let's say, those archaeological sites also hosted some internally displaced people. So it was also a target by the Syrian regime. As I mentioned, that since the, let's say, the area went into a random situation at early time, there were also some looting, illegal excavations in the area, and that was, let's say, with no like guarding or even controlling for the preservation of the area. I showed these two photos of the destruction. Some were destroyed by the bombing. The others were also targeted by, like, not targeted, like, let's say it's by the locals who used some of the materials to rebuild their houses or something. And these areas as well were hosting many internally displaced people. So there were some also modifications of these sites in order to meet their, like, let's say, living requirements in a very basic way. So this also affected these sites to change their original or saved or preserved situation. During the time, no really protection for these sites for many years. And also there was a lack of international support. Many of international organizations didn't support the region due to many political and security things. And that's also made the normal situation of these sites to go down by time. This one of the photos of the damages, this I could got it from Idleb, which is a Syrian journal, and that shows the severe damage at the Banatsa archaeological site, which is in the Al-Bustani mountain. It's taken in 2021. So later on, I just wanted to mention one thing, which is the map of from 2020 to 2024 recently. The situation currently, since this the former front line was between the Syrian opposition and the Syrian regime. The Syrian regime planted many mines on this area. Many of them are in these archaeological sites, and they still, some people went there and died recently. So just to highlight this emergency of dismantling all these mines in order to bring a little bit of a security situation to this area. And the other things, which is many of these sites, let's say the newly freed area, that are with no proper guarding, and there is a danger of maybe again looting, illegal excavations, and also the area is rich of the the archaeological hills, and many of them were also targeted by illegal excavations. The situation also, as I talked with one of the head of the Center of Heritage Protection in Idlib. He said to me that the Museum of Martin Norman is quite in a good shape, but recently, not recently, let's say 2018, before the entry of the Syrian regime, it was targeted by the air forces. Many of the building structures are damaged, but the pieces or the mosaic pieces inside the museum were quite in a good shape, but needs continuous protection. So I just later on, I hope that we can also highlight the situation, that's the emergencies which should be taken into consideration for the next phase, and that will be very much appreciated. The other things I just wanted to highlight before I close down, I finish my presentation, that during the recent 5-6 years, we tried to apply for projects to have funding. We could succeed in 2-3 projects, not more. Was with cooperation with Heritage for Peace. we could do some training mainly. And the situation, it's still like not really in a good shape, which is like it should be improved in the region, since also Idlib, it holds the Syrian opposition before, and it's like it's still now it's not the areas which are freed, most of them are destroyed and need a proper preservation. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that I was on time. Thank you.
Mahmoud, you were not only on time, but you have a minute to spare. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's great. And while, thank you, Mahmoud, we're now looking for Ayman Nabo. Ayman, you're there. I can see your name.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Yep.
Beginning, I want to thank you for giving this opportunity to speak about the situation, especially counter authorities in Idlib province. I prefer talking in Arabic.
Please.
Can you please give me sharing permit? And I'm glad to meet both with my professors and my colleagues in this meeting.
Yeah.
Can you see my slide?
Yeah, we can see your screen. Thank you.
I would speak quickly using a few slides about the state of antiquities in Idlib government. We have worked on this file since 2013 when we founded the Idlib Antiquities Center. There are more than 1,000 archaeological sites in Idlib Governorate from different prehistoric times, ancient times and Islamic times. Here there are examples of the most prominent archaeological sites. These include mosaic pieces, pallets, and other sites. These sites were subject to different types of damage and destruction due to different reasons. Here you can see samples of the destruction or damage. For example, the stones of the archaeological sites were used for building. Here you can see an image from Sam'an Castle, which was hit by an airstrike. And the last image is an example of secret excavation. Here to the left, you can see that people sometimes built new houses in archaeological sites. In addition, many sites were turned into IDP camps. I would talk quickly about our initiative at the Idlib Museum. We implemented several protection projects in different areas, including Ma'arat al-Nu'man. The Museum of Ma'arat al-Nu'man was damaged by airstrikes, and in 2015, it was hit by 2 barrel bombs. Here we work on covering the mosaic pieces and creating a 3D model for documentation. In addition, we worked on supporting archaeological sites such as Ebla, which was subject to a lot of attacks. We did the same in different other sites. Here you can see different types of damage. For example, gunfire targeted at the walls. To support this wall, we used stones and other techniques. In Idleb Museum was damaged in 2015, 2020. Several airstrikes resulted in large damage, including the archives in the museum. We made an inventory of Idlib Museum to record all antiquities there using new serial numbers. But unfortunately, we don't have an exact number of the stolen or lost items. We used Access to document all pieces. We also reopened Idlib Museum. Let's say we reopened about 20% of the museum, and it hosted different activities for children and awareness raising activities. Many items were reported to the Interpol. We were able to safeguard 8 items. Here you can see images of our mosaic work at the museum. These activities involved women and university students. We dedicated a wing or a room hall for these activities. We also used drones for documentation purposes. We also discovered new tombs in new areas. Some areas were excavated by local residents. We also worked on 3D documentation in collaboration with a Japanese university. We took part in several trainings and conferences, and we provided updates about our work. Here you can see images from a campaign in 2020 to draw attention to the antiquities in Idlib. We also involved children to raise their awareness about the importance of antiquities and how to take care of them. We organized several trips to these sites. We took part in different international conferences and reports. We took part in different conferences, different countries. Lastly, I agree very much with Dr. Michel Maqdissi regarding the need for an urgent initiative. We have already been in contact with the new administration, with the current leadership. I believe the mindset of the General Directorate of Antiquities and Museums should change now. There should be involvement or engagement with all relevant actors. maybe antiquities are not at the top priorities of the new administration, and they don't have specialists in this regard. So I believe we need a conference for archaeologists to discuss the new stage. Thank you so much.
Sorry. Thank you, Ayman, very much for that, and thank you very much for keeping to time. And we now have our last speaker, Malik Al-Abda. Malik.
Thank you very much. I feel very underqualified because I'm not an antiquities expert, I'm not an archaeologist, and I'm not a historian. However, I know a thing or two about conflict. I work in the conflict resolution world, and I was lucky enough to visit many of the archaeological sites in northwest Syria with Dr. Michael Delacruz of Blue Shield. And we were also lucky enough to have Dr. Ayman Nabo guide us through many of the heritage sites in Idlib. And we built a reasonable picture of the governance or the approach of the various governance authorities in northwest and northern Syria. These are the governance authorities affiliated to the Syrian opposition. And I'm not sure if the participants in this conference are aware, but there are two governments actually, or there were two governments in northern Syria until quite recently. The first one is the Syrian Salvation Government, which is affiliated to HTS, which controlled mostly Idlib province. And also there is the Syrian Interim Government, which controls northern Aleppo. And the two governance bodies had a different approach to the issue of heritage preservation. Now, in general, both didn't have, let's say, robust enough mechanisms or resources to really help preserve many of the sites that have either been lived in by IDPs or used to store sheep or animal feed in many cases. But also many of these sites have been subject to looting, if not all of them. And the evidence for looting is very clear when you visit these sites. So clearly there wasn't enough protection for these sites. Now, it has to also be said that the SSG does have an office which looks at the issue of antiquities. This is what is known as the Committee for Burials and Finds. And it was their attempt to, let's say, legalize treasure hunting, or at least to try to control it, to stop antiquities from leaving the country. So you had to actually obtain a license in order to use a metal detector. And if you were treasure hunting without the use of this license, you were likely to get into trouble. Now, some critics might say that this is a legalized way of looting. At the very least, however, it did establish a minimum degree of governance. However, it has to be said that it was far from perfect. As for the SIG, because of a lack of resources, but also a lack of authority, it doesn't really have any mechanism to try to control or limit looting of heritage sites. And during our visit, we did witness very fresh evidence of looting, even using heavy machinery. So the ancient city of Cyrus, for example, in Afrin, unfortunately, parts of it had been simply bulldozed over. And people were rummaging through the remains to try to find small trinkets or other pieces of antiquities that they could sell on. Now, fortunately, this looting was also happening with the knowledge or perhaps even the collusion of some local armed actors. So clearly, both in the SSG and the SIG areas, there was a deficient governance for heritage preservation. Now, Dr. Michael and I had been trying for a while to engage the SIG, Syrian Interim Government, to actually establish a Directorate of Antiquities to try to at least implement a minimum level of governance, starting with training professionals, providing training to police officers. However, the recent events have slightly overtaken our efforts. And now actually we're in a much better position because there is now a new regime in Damascus. And now we have, for the first time, an opportunity to work directly with the DGAM and with the central government, the Ministry of Culture. So I think it's an exciting time for a lot of people who are involved in this space. I'm not going to take too much time because I think we only have 20 minutes left. I will end on a few ideas or recommendations for how our work can continue and to take full advantage of opportunities in the future. First of all, preserving heritage, I think, first of all, should be seen as a way of preserving national identity, creating a national reconciliation efforts. There's going to be a lot of resources spent on this in the coming years in Syria. So if there is a way for cultural and heritage preservation to actually be linked to the issue of national reconciliation, I think that would be quite useful. Also, we all know that there's also going to be a lot of resources spent on development and early recovery in Syria. So if there is a way of fashioning or designing projects that tap into the development, early recovery, and even reconstruction fields, perhaps even with a focus on reestablishing or supporting the tourist sector, I think this would be quite useful. Because linking heritage preservation, of course, heritage preservation has a value in itself, of course, but also if it's linked to some of these wider issues that are likely to garner a lot of interest, not only by the international community, but also by the transitional government in Damascus, which is likely to receive billions of dollars of support from the West, but also from some Arab countries as well. Now, I think the big opportunity really for people working in this space is that heritage is really a way of winning international sympathy and international recognition for the new government that will, for the transitional government that will take over in March of next year. And so there's going to be a desire by the new government to, let's say, use all the tools that are available to get sanctions lifted and to be accepted once again into the international community. And so I think the issue of heritage is likely to feature very highly. And I would like to support actually Ayman's suggestion of an international conference, ideally in Damascus, if the security situation permits. There needs to be an international conference or an international, at the very least, international efforts in this regard, where, let's say, a roadmap, a plan of action can be put together and all the players in this field can work cooperatively and not at cross purposes. I've been involved in Syria since 2005 in terms of in Syrian politics. I've been involved in the conflict since it first began. And I've seen when civil society organizations, INGOs and NGOs compete with one another, it really creates really negative dynamics. So I think there needs to be a collaborative approach and we need to learn the lessons of the last 13 years. Thank you.
Malek, thank you very much indeed. And that brings the presentations to an end. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. First one, as a sort of general question, what ideas can we formulate here for the management of cultural heritage for the mutual benefit of the population and national or regional administration? In particular, I mean the local population should benefit systematically from tourism income, and that the administration can use the contribution of civil society to monitor and protect the many sites through regulatory provision. Would any of the speakers like to talk to that? Isba.
Yeah. So actually, during these 13 years of war, civil society in Syria became very, very active. And before, we didn't have civil society working with cultural heritage. So now we are in a phase that really there is a need for more empowerment for civil society, but again, in coordination as well with the state authority, the DGAM. During all of these years, we worked in order to empower civil society, and it was a big challenge because it's new, the phenomenon of civil society, it's new in Syria. So we needed to do a lot of training in order to train them how they can write a proposal, how they can gain a trustful relation with the donors. It was not easy. Now I think we really we are in better situation. We need to bring all of those people to be more active as well in the management. I was researching, and I did several papers on the management of cultural heritage in Syria. Especially there is a study which I published 2 years ago. It explains all the problems that we faced before the conflict in comparison to what happened during the conflict. And what it was really, we need a new structure. We need a new Syrian heritage law. The Syrian heritage law that we have is very, very ancient. Is from 1963. So it doesn't even have any harmony with the international conventions. So this is very, very important. Also, something very, very important, and I want to here raise the missions, the foreign missions of archaeological missions that we have in Syria. Many of them, we are very grateful to their huge efforts. I would like to mention Professor Jennifer Baird, Professor Graham Philip from Durham University, Juan Jose Ibanez from the Spanish National Research Council, which I am affiliated as well as a researcher now. So we need really now to the archaeologists who worked in Syria, they need to look back to Syria in different way, because they cannot repeat the mistakes of the past, which there were many of the archaeologists, they're just working for research and they excluded the communities. So now really there is a huge importance as well to involve more the communities and to do more awareness, to do more involvement. So this is issues we really need to change. And the archaeologists, the foreign archaeologists, a lot of them that are waiting and they have hope now to come back. So please think about the people, bring the people to your missions, work with the people and work to raise awareness. We have fragmented now communities. We have communities which they are suffering from all the consequences of the war. We need to do more in order to use cultural heritage for the well-being of the Syrian people in the new era after Assad.
Thank you, Isba. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop you there. Are there any of the other speakers who would like to comment? I can't see all of you, but I don't hear anybody shouting at me, so we'll go to another question. What criteria do you believe should guide the prioritization of efforts to safeguard and restore cultural heritage in Syria, given the limited resources and the extensive scale of destruction? Would any of the speakers like to speak to that? Mahmoud.
Maybe I can answer this question since it's a little bit complicated and hard. Like it's not easy to answer since like what standards. That's there is no site more important than other sites apart from, let's say, talking about the World Heritage lists. These things which is like, let's say, internationally important, but also the local heritage is important at the same time. So that's sort of the limited resources and, let's say, efforts that will make it also hard in order to deal with all these destroyed areas, sites and locations. I think there will be sort of, in my opinion, that should be sort of not the priorities, but sort of the importance related to locals, like, and also to the international committees. That's just in my opinion related to this question.
Thank you very much. Any of the other speakers like to say anything to this? No. Okay.
Just I want to add something here.
Very quickly, Isba.
Yes, we need really to make priorities, and now with the Amina project funded by the Cultural Protection Fund, they are really put serious ideas. So we are trying to document the destruction, and we need really to make a priorities of what we should focus first. One of the most important things is capacity building. We don't have people who are working, so now with this project we trained 30 people in order to use GIS and GBIS to document destruction, but now there are really huge needs to train Syrians, so we need really to invest more in capacity building.
Okay, thank you very much. There is a message in the chat that everybody can see, but just very quickly, Luna Rajib writes that she is the president of ICOMOS Syria, and ICOMOS Syria have launched an initiative regarding cultural heritage preservation with all of the related national and international NGOs, and please do get in touch with ICOMOS Syria, and she leaves a mobile phone number there. Okay, and then there is a question in the chat about the preservation of Christian heritage, and there are two responses to that about the Latin Church in Deir ez-Zor, and so we can leave that. Back to the Q&A, and another question from Carl. How do you view the balance between urgent actions to protect endangered heritage and long-term strategies for the restoration and reintegration of cultural heritage into Syrian society? Very quick and easy answer to that. Ayman, would you like to take that one? Ayman, you need to unmute and then you can speak. Perfect.
I'd like to stress one important point. Throughout our work during the conflict, we've noticed that one of the main reasons for sabotage and destruction committed by local communities is due to the fact that the local community have the sense of lack of ownership and lack of identification with the archaeological sites, because the government was alienating the local community from those sites. So we need to work on fostering this sense of belonging, and to ensure that the local community feel empowered and feel that those local sites are theirs. And we need to start with awareness campaigns in order to encourage preservation. Legal action alone cannot guarantee sustainable preservation. Engaging the local community is a necessity, and it is an urgent necessity, in my opinion. We need to build this culture that will serve in the short and long term.
Ayman, thank you very much indeed. We have about 3 minutes left, and so I will take that just to do a very brief summary, which is an impossible task, but I try. There are all sorts of pressures, obviously, on the historic environment and archaeological sites and other buildings in Syria at the moment, from historic buildings being used as animal pens to many IEDs still there, the deliberate booby trapping of archaeological sites, extensive mines, aerial bombardment, the attritional damage done by people trying to find safety in archaeological ruins and old historic buildings, the removal of material from ancient sites for building material, the building of new houses on archaeological sites, and of course, looting. But there is also in those presentations a huge amount of fantastic work going on. There is the reporting of volunteers wanting to protect archaeological sites, including children in educational and awareness raising programs about the importance of heritage. The idea of an international conference, hopefully in Damascus. And all of the speakers are involved in one way or another to get involved in that protection effort. One of the speakers said that antiquities are not necessarily going to be the top of the new government's agenda. I completely agree, it's not. But we need to make sure, as Malik was saying, of linking protection of heritage to reconciliation and development and economic development and restabilization. And by doing that, we can ingrain it more in those processes. So thank you enormously to all of those of you who have spoken. Thank you to everybody who has joined. I see there have been over 80 people at various times on the webinar. That was there. Emma says that there hasn't been enough time to answer all of the questions. That's true. I was just about to say that. But we will keep them in mind and try and begin to answer them at the second half of this project on the 20th of January. And the details about that are on the link that you got for this webinar. I just thank everybody for your efforts, your enthusiasm, your perseverance, who has spoken. You are at the very, very sharp end of dealing with the protection of cultural property. I look out of my window and I see the tranquility of the Northumberland landscape. I don't see IEDs or bomb craters or hear the sound of jets. So we will do as much as we possibly can to support you. And the next session on the 20th of January will go some way to trying to understand how we can formulate that support and how we can move forward and help you. So thank you very much indeed for everybody. You can see people saying thanks in the chat.